Hello friends, welcome to the lecture of functional analysis. In the last lecture, we have seen the natural embedding of n into n double star. We have seen by taking the nature of elements in every set n, n star and k, and in detail we have discussed how the natural embedding happens between n and in double star. Now in today's lecture, we will prove that there exists isometric isomorphism between n to n double star. For this, let me share my screen. Yes, here we are. Okay. Now in today's lecture, our aim is to prove that the mapping which we have discussed J from n to n double star in the last lecture, that mapping we want to this mapping J from n to n double star, whichever we have defined, was defined as G of x is equal to fx, where fx is a functional on n star, that is in n double star. Now the aim is to prove that this is isometric isomorphism of n into n double star. Let me write the statement of the theorem. The theorem says that the theorem is, let n be a normed linear space, then prove that each vector x in n induces a functional fx induces a functional capital F with a suffix s, fx on n star, that is in n double star, right? On n star defined by capital F x operated on F is equal to f of x, for every f in n star, such that norm of fx is equal to norm of x. Norm of fx is equals to norm of x. Also the mapping J from n to n double star defined by Jx equal to fx. Jx equals to fx for every x in n gives an isometric isomorphism. Of n into n double star. Okay, if we read the statement somewhat very clearly, what it is telling us an idea, we want to prove that for every vector x in n, it induces a functional fx on n star, that is in n double star, defined by fx of f is equal to f of x for every f in n star, such that the norm values are same. Also, this mapping J from n into n double star is defined by Jx equal to fx is an isometric isomorphism. Actually, we will just recall the triangular sketch we have drawn in the last lecture. Just few seconds it will take to recall. This is the structure. For every x in n, a functional f is defined from n to k. Therefore, the corresponding element is f of x. Now, as f is a functional from n to k, therefore this belongs to n star. Therefore, here I will write the nature of element in n star is f. Now, if we define another functional from n star to k, let it be by capital F. Now, what will be an image of this small f under capital F is of the type capital F of small f. but it is finally it is the member of the set K. But already the nature of element in K we have defined to be f of x. Therefore, somewhere this will be equality and this value depends on x, because we are equating to f of x now. F of x depends on x. Therefore, whatever the initial statement given, for every vector x in n there exists a functional, or it induces a function. For every x, we know there is one mapping. Now in this theorem, we will prove that this mapping capital F is a functional. In order to prove this to be functional, we will prove that capital Fx is linear and bounded, or linear and continuous. Therefore, here we will write f with the suffix x, because every functional depends on x. Therefore, for every x, we have a one functional. Therefore, this part is very clear that for every vector we have one function capital Fx. The job is to prove that this function is a functional. That is proving it is linear and bounded. Therefore, in the first part we have to prove that it induces a functional, means we will just verify the two conditions, that the capital Fx function is linear and bounded. This is the definition we have. In that same step we will prove norm Fx is equal to norm x. In second step we will prove that the mapping is an isometric isomorphism defined by Jx equal to Fx. Okay, let us proceed. Coming to step number 1, I will change the color of my pen. Step 1. What we want to prove in step 1? To prove that capital Fx is functional on n star. Functional on n star, that is in n double star. Okay, that is to prove Fx is linear and bounded. Fx is linear and bounded on n star. For this, first we will prove linearity and then we will go for boundedness. For this, let me consider. What should we consider? Consider any arbitrary elements in n star, because Fx, recall, Fx is defined from n star to k. Therefore, let us start with any arbitrary functionals in n star. Alpha, beta be the scalars taken from the field K, say. Okay, then we will consider the linear combination of these elements, right? The capital Fx operated on a linear combination alpha f plus beta g. Alpha f plus beta g. But what is the definition? Fx operated on small f is small f of x. This is the definition, right? Therefore, Fx operated on alpha f plus beta g is nothing but alpha f plus beta g operated on x. Operated on x. Here this is by definition of Fx. By definition of Fx. Now here we will apply pointwise operation. First we will use for addition. Therefore, this is alpha f operated on x plus beta g operated on x. This is by a definition we have seen na, S and T are the two functionals operated on x. Then this is defined as S of x plus T of x. Same logic we are using. Next, we will use pointwise operation with respect to scalar multiplication. That is alpha f operated on x, we will write alpha times f of x plus this second one we will write beta times g of x. This is by some alpha s operated on x is alpha into s of x. Okay, pointwise operation of addition and scalar multiplication we have used simply. Now let me write this fx and gx as. How can I write fx? May I write this as fx image of small f, and here I will write beta times. What should I write? Fx image of g, and hence we have started with fx of alpha f plus beta g, and we have proved it as equal to alpha fx operated on f plus beta fx operated on g. Hence fx is linear. Thus fx is linear. Now we will go for proving boundedness. Now for proving boundedness, what kind of inequality one should prove? What kind of inequality one should prove? Let me just recall. T is said to be bounded if norm of T of x is less than or equals to some fixed constant into norm of x. This is what an inequality we are aiming to prove. Now for any f in n star, we get what we get. Now here instead of norm, we are starting with modulus as usual because we are having the scalar valued function. Therefore I will write fx operated on f within the modulus. Fx operated on f within the modulus, and by fx definition we know this is f of x. This is f of x. But what about mod of f of x? As f is a functional itself, therefore f itself is bounded. If f itself is bounded, may I write it is less equal by norm of f into norm of x. Reason, f is bounded. Why? Because f is a member of a n star. That is itself it is the functional. Now keep this inequality in mind. Fx operated on f less than or equals to norm f into norm of x. This x is a fixed vector at the starting only we have discussed. Therefore norm x, assuming this norm x is a fixed scalar, taking norm x is fixed scalar. Why it is fixed scalar? For every x we are getting one functional. Okay, therefore what will be the effect on the inequality? Mod of fx of f is less equal by, if I write it as some m into norm of f. What I am writing? Capital M is some norm of x. This is the fixed scalar we are taking. Now look at the inequality. Mod fx of f, fx operated on f is less equal by constant into norm of f. Therefore may I say fx is bounded. Fx is bounded. Thus we have proved fx is both linear and bounded. Therefore one can say that thus fx is functional. Functional defined on n star. Fx is functional defined on n star. Okay. Now what one more step to prove? Next step we will go for proving norm of f of x is equal to norm of x. If you want, one can just have a look to the definition to the statement again. How many things we want to prove? First, fx is functional. This step we have completed. Later we want to prove that norm fx is equal to norm x, and in the third step the mapping is isometric isomorphism. Therefore let me go for second step. Norm of fx is equal to norm of x. Therefore first let me use the definition of operator norm. What is the definition? Norm fx. What will be a definition? This is supremum. Instead of norm we have modulus, that we know now. Therefore this is mod of fx of f on the condition f in n star and norm f is less than or equals to 1. See what the changes I have made while writing the definition of operator norm. Let me write the original definition. The original definition is norm t is equal to supremum norm t of x, x in n, norm x is less than or equals to 1. This is the original definition. Now we are using this original definition in order to find out norm of f of x. The definition goes parallelly. Here instead of norm we have modulus because it is a scalar valued function. Now whatever t is operated on x, that x must be a member of n. Here also fx is operated on f, f is a member of n star. Similarly t is operated on x and that x must, norm value of that x must be less equal by 1. Here also fx is operated on f, therefore norm value of the function f we have taken to be less than or equals to 1. Therefore just we are using the definition. Coming back, therefore according to this definition, now here we will keep this previous inequality. I'll just give some numbering. Shall I call this as some equation number 1? Therefore here we have written mod fx of f is less equal by norm f into norm of x. Therefore, may I just replace this? Therefore, this equality becomes less equal. Suprema norm f into norm of x, provided f is in n star and norm f is less than or equals to 1. Now just have a look. The statement we are finding suprema of norm f into norm x, f in n star, norm f is less than or equals to 1. If I keep norm f is less than or equals to 1, what will be the effect on the statement? Norm f is less than or equals to 1. Suprema is dependent on f, that we are removing. Therefore, this remains with simply norm of x. Therefore, here we have proved norm fx is less than or equals to norm x. Let me call this as an inequality number 2. Now our aim is to prove the reverse part of the inequality, that is norm fx is greater equal by norm of x. Now to prove the reverse part of the inequality, we are going to use one of the consequence of the Han-Banach theorem. Therefore, shall I write, to prove reverse inequality, to prove reverse inequality by consequence, by Han-Banach consequence number 1, by Han-Banach consequence number 1. Okay, therefore may I say there exists a functional, there exists a functional, what functional? Functional small f in n star such that, what such that? F of x is equal to, f of x is equal to, sorry, f of x is equal to norm of x and norm f is equal to 1. Let me call this to be statement number 3. This is the Han-Banach, this is the first consequence of Han-Banach theorem we have proved in the last lectures. Okay, now consider, shall I start with norm x? Norm x is equal to f of x. Okay, if I take modulus on both the sides, there is no change because norm x itself is a non-negative quantity. Now may I write this mod f of x is what will be a relation between, if I find the suprema of this mod f x, provided norm f equal to 1. What will be a relation? The set under the consideration is mod f x. Mod f x is an arbitrary value. No doubt suprema will be greater 1. Therefore, mod f x is less equal by suprema mod f x. Norm f is equal to 1. If I look at this set is nothing but operator norm. Operator norm of what? Fx is nothing but, fx is nothing but supremum mod fx of f, provided norm f is equal to 1. This is the second definition of the operator norm. And here we know this right side is nothing but norm of fx, right? This right side is nothing but norm of fx. Okay, therefore we have proved norm fx is greater equal by norm of x. Let me call this as statement number say 4. In 2 we have, I think, yes, in 2 we have proved norm fx is less equal by norm x. Now in 4 we have proved norm fx is greater equal by 4, greater equal by norm x. Therefore from 2 and 4, norm fx is exactly equal to norm of x. Hence we have proved the second step of the theorem. Now let us go to the third step. What we want to do in step 3? In step 3 we want to prove that J is an isometric isomorphism. J is an isometric isomorphism of n into n double star. Okay, how the mapping J is being defined? We will just recall J defined from n to n double star. The definition is J operated on x is fx. Okay, for every x in n, we know that there exists a functional fx in double star. Therefore, the mapping here it was defined as Jx equals to fx, right? Proving it is an isometric isomorphism means how many steps to prove? We'll just recall. In isomorphism, we must verify linearity and one-oneness. Linearity and one because linearity is nothing but homomorphism, preserving the operations. Therefore, one linearity, isometry. 3 steps to prove. One linearity and isometry. Now, if I want to prove linearity in J, look at this definition. If I take J of alpha x plus beta y, it will be f alpha x plus beta y, and which will be somewhat complicated. Here I'll write. If I want to prove J linear, and if I directly take alpha x plus beta y, then this is f alpha x plus beta y. Then prove, our aim is to prove that this is equal to J alpha jx plus beta jy, that is alpha fx plus beta fy. It will be somewhat tedious to prove. Therefore, what we will do? We will prove linearity with respect to addition and scalar multiplication separately. Addition and scalar multiplication separately. Therefore, consider with respect to addition. This is J x plus y. Definition say this is f x plus y. What is our aim to prove? This is jx plus jy. That is fx plus fy. But this f is a function. Therefore, in order to prove that this fx plus y is fx plus fy, we have to operate it on the element of its domain. The element of its domain. What is the element of the domain? Fx is a mapping defined from n star to k, right now, because fx is an element in n double star. Therefore, the element in domain is the functional. Therefore, here to prove the next step, anyhow, we should apply this functional on an arbitrary element in n star. Therefore, for any arbitrary f in n star, we have what we have? We will apply fx plus y on f. What will be fx plus y on f? According to the definition, this is fx plus y. We'll check the definition again. Where we have written in the statement itself, I think. Yes, fx of f is f of x is the definition itself. Therefore, here I am just using the definition to prove the linearity of J, right? Therefore, this is fx plus y of f is fx plus y. But f itself is a functional. F is a member of n star. Therefore, it is functional. Means it is linear. Therefore, as a linearity, I can write this as fx plus fy. Fx plus fy. If I am writing this as fx plus fy, can I write this as fx of f plus fx of f? Sorry, fy of f. Fy of f. And using pointwise operation, let us take fx plus fy in one bracket operated on f. Therefore, what we have obtained for an arbitrary f in n star, fx plus y operated on f is fx plus fy of f. Therefore, may I write fx plus y is equal to fx plus fy. Okay. Therefore, let us use this in the statement here. Shall I call this by some number? What is the last number we have used? 4, no? Let me give some 5. Okay. Therefore, use this value in 5. Therefore, 5 becomes. What 5 becomes? Jx plus y is equal to fx plus y. Now, I am using this above statement to write it as fx plus fy, which is nothing but jx plus jy. Therefore, linearity with respect to addition holds. Okay. Now, we will go for scalar multiplication. Now, what for scalar multiplication? Therefore, let me write for scalar multiplication j alpha x. No? For scalar multiplication, let me consider j alpha x. Therefore, this is f alpha x. Therefore, we cannot proceed further. Therefore, again consider arbitrary f in n star. What this arbitrary functional will help us? We will operate this f alpha x on this arbitrary f. Therefore, what is the definition? This is f alpha x. But f itself is a functional and hence linear. Therefore, this is alpha fx. But what this fx is? This is f x of f. Right? Therefore, f alpha x of f, we have obtained alpha fx of f. Therefore, putting this in the above equation. Therefore, above equation becomes, what this above equation becomes, j alpha x is equals to f alpha x. Here f alpha x, as this f is arbitrary, may I write alpha fx. Alpha fx, that is alpha j of x. Hence j is linear with respect to, j preserves scalar multiplication, and hence combining both, one can say that j is linear. J is linear. Next step is actually to go for one-oneness, but before that I will prove it as an isometry. Why? Because the fact we know that isometry is 1-1. Isometry is 1-1. Therefore, here I will just give number 1. Not here. Linearity, na? Linearity we have proved. First step. Now we will prove claim J is an isometry. J is an isometry. Now what isometry? In order to prove isometry, what should I prove? What should I prove? Norm Jx is equal to norm of x. Na? Therefore, let us start. Norm Jx, J operated on x. But norm J operated on x is nothing but norm fx. And in the step number 2, we have already proved that norm fx is equal to norm x. Hence, J is an isometry. Okay. Or you can check this by norm Jx minus Jy, which is nothing but norm fx minus fy, which is nothing but fx minus y. Which steps I am using? I am using these steps which we have already proved. Fx plus y is fx plus fy. Therefore, what about minus? Minus will be there, right? Therefore, norm fx minus fy. Norm fx is equal to norm x. We have already. Therefore, this is norm x minus y. Norm jx minus jy is norm x minus y. Anyway, one can prove in any way. Therefore, one can say that J is an isometry. J is an isometry. What third to prove? J is claim. J is 1-1. But no need to prove 1-1ness now, because every isometry is 1-1. But still, if I want to prove, I have to consider Jx equal to Jy, right? Which gives me norm of Jx minus Jy is equal to 0. Just now we have proved norm Jx minus Jy is norm x minus y. Therefore, this is norm x minus y is equal to 0. If norm x minus y is equals to 0, it gives you x minus y is equals to 0, and hence x is equal to y. Thus, the mapping J is 1-1 as well. Therefore, the 3 steps we have proved. The mapping J is, thus J is linear, isometry, and 1-1. What we have obtained that J is an isometric isomorphism of n into n double star. Right? If anyhow this mapping was onto, then one can say that n is isometrically isomorphic to n double star, where this gives you the space to be a reflexive space, right? In last lecture we have discussed in detail. Therefore, I hope you have understood the today's lecture. Only one theorem we have taken. The natural embedding is an isometric isomorphism. I hope you have understood. If you have any query, you can ask me at any time. Now in the next lecture, we are moving ahead towards the separable sets. And to understand the separable sets, you should know some basic definitions such as countable sets, dense sets, nowhere dense sets, closure, etc. Therefore, here today I will give you a homework. What is the homework? Homework, right? Actually, in our live classes, I am giving you daily homeworks. No? From online, whenever we have started online, I have not given any homework till now. Therefore, today I will give you a homework. First, find out what is countable sets, right? Then you can go for equivalent also. Find out what is dense set, nowhere dense, closure, offset, and etc. Some related definitions, right? Therefore, just have a look on these basic definition. Then only you will understand the next lecture of separable sets. Thank you for watching today's lecture.